The Monkey is the latest Stephen King adaptation to hit theaters. This one is produced by James Wan, also directed and written by Osgood Perkins. This movie is about two twin brothers, Hal and Bill, who find their dad's old wind-up drumming monkey. It's not the monkey with the symbols on the book cover, because apparently Disney owns the rights to that one because they used it in Toy Story 3 one time, so they just own it forever. I think that's what they said. Crazy. Anyways, they find this monkey, they wind it up, and it just plays drums. Seems like nothing's happening, right? Then someone close to them dies, and maybe a couple other people do, and then it continues to cause problems even when they enter adulthood, when they're both played by Theo James. They think they've left it behind for good. But it comes back, and they gotta figure out what's going on. I was really excited for this movie. Obviously, James Wan is one of the big names on here, and Stephen King, you know, that seems like a match made in heaven. James Wan is one of the biggest names in horror, and Stephen King adaptations, you know, they come a lot, you know, and they come in different flavors. Some of them are great, some of them can be a little funny, some of them are kind of nothing. But the thing that really sold me on this movie, like why I was anticipating it from the start, aside from some good trailers, was the fact that it was written and directed by Osgood Perkins. I've been a fan of this guy for quite a bit. I Am the Pretty Thing That Lives in the House, available on Netflix. Really good movie, really solid film, but then The Black Coat's Daughter I thought was even better. I really, really loved that one. And I wasn't expecting to love it as much because it's kind of one of those movies that some people would recommend, but it wasn't like, you know, it hadn't really found like a big audience or anything, and I don't think that's still happened. It's kind of one of those horror movies that will split people too. But when I saw it, I was like, man, I was blown away by this guy's talent. I wasn't too big on Gretel and Hansel, but even in that movie, it's like, it's not a perfect film, it's not necessarily for me, but there are still shades of like what this guy can do with other projects with a higher budget, and then he came back strong with Longlegs last year, which I fucking love. That's my favorite Oz Perkins film that he has made so far. And despite the fact that you'll hear some people who are like, that wasn't necessarily my thing, I'm not sure why people love it as much as they did, it still made a profit at the box office. It got a lot of people talking, and there are quite a few people that think it's a really great film. And now we're back with The Monkey a couple months later. And he's been working, you know, with Neon. Neon distributed Longlegs and now this, and he's got another film coming from them, starring Tatiana Maslany once again, called Keeper. I saw this at the advanced, like, screening at AMC, like, a week before it came out, so I didn't know at the time maybe there was a post-credit scene, which was essentially a trailer for that movie. I don't know if they even did that for that screening in particular. They didn't have the Alison Brie, Dave Franco trailer there either, which is, they kind of announced both of those at the same time. Point is, though, I missed it, kind of bummed, because I'm just so into whatever this guy makes. He's one of my favorite artists working today. And I really enjoyed this movie. From the start of this movie, with the opening scene, which has a cameo from an actor I won't spoil, but they do, you know, lean more on the comedic side of things. You see this brutal Final Destination-esque kill, and then it ends on this joke delivered by, you know, this cameo. And it was kind of clear to me, like, oh, this isn't gonna be like Longlegs. And I didn't think it was going to be necessarily going in, but that kind of cemented it for me. Like, this is a totally different side of Oz Perkins that I haven't even seen before, you know? And then the rest of the movie, seeing how they weave in this offbeat, dry comedy with this movie, I thought it worked so well. There are so many points where I was laughing hysterically. Dry humor is something that I really appreciate. You know, if you do it really well, it can give me some of the biggest laughs ever. And especially when you start to combine it with some of this horror storytelling, you know, some of these horror tropes, you know, it just really landed for me. There's one abrupt cut to another scene, and I won't spoil it, but it kind of plays into some stuff that we had been seeing kind of before, and you probably didn't even know, you know, they're starting to build up, you know, jokes sometimes come in threes. You don't even really realize they're starting to build up to that third punchline, and I was fucking, like, rolling on the floor. It was so goddamn funny, and there's so many points like that in this movie for me. And I've seen some people, and I'm not trying to knock on anyone who this movie is not for. I can totally see why this isn't going to be for everybody, but there are a couple people that seem to be so, like, definitive in their answer with saying that it's tonally confused. They don't know when to be serious and when to be goofy. They go too overboard. And those kind of sentiments to me are like, it's one thing to say like it's just not for you, the kind of, style and tone they're going for. It's another thing to kind of like wildly just misinterpret what Oz Perkins, I think, is pretty clearly going for. And if you want any more confirmation, I think he's even said in interviews, like when he saw the original script that they had, the original plans, he was like, it's a little too serious for me. And he's even gone further to say like, he's had his own kind of like struggles with like, grief and death in the family with these wild circumstances, like headline making circumstances. You can look into it. Obviously his father's Anthony Perkins, but look into his parents, and it is crazy. It really, if you were in his position, you would be in that like spiral. Why me? Like, why is this happening? You know what I mean? Like, why did this happen to these people? But he even like stated like the way he kind of found his way out of that like darkness is kind of realizing, as sad as it is, death happens to everybody. It's not that it's a laughing matter, but it does just happen to everybody. And there is like some kind of like sick, twisted joke involved with like how tragedy befalls you. It's not like death incarnate is like specifically pinpointing you or anything. It's a part of life. It just happens. Sometimes you've lived a long life and you die of natural causes. Other times it's a tragedy. Sometimes it's kind of crazy what kind of tragedy is. It's like the circumstances make you go like, what? So the film kind of encapsulates a lot of that. Like every single death, I think they've even said, like they tried to go for like the most out there, like borderline impossible kind of death that you can imagine. People just fucking explode at certain points. It looks great also. The kill sequences are filmed so excellently. There's not a point where I'm watching it and I'm like, oh, you kind of missed a step there, or like, oh, that doesn't look very good. Every single kill sequence looks great. They build up to it in a very good way through their editing and just the cinematography. The movie has a great look. So it has all of these things, like this kind of nihilistic feel throughout, right, as far as like its themes. But the ultimate driving force at the end, that we see portrayed mostly through Hal, played by Theo James, that despite how easy it may feel to, see all this stuff happening and be scared of it, close yourself off from it emotionally. The thing you have to realize, though, is that that's not the way to go about it, because as we've stated, it happens to everybody. You never know when it's going to happen. So make the most of the people you have with you, of the life that you have. To misquote a line that Tatiana Maslany even has in this film, everybody dies, let's go dancing. That's like the entire theme of the film, and I just thought it was worked in so incredibly well. I do like the fact that this isn't a very serious movie, that they do work in this like dry, offbeat comedy into it. And I think all of the actors have been directed in a very particular way. This movie isn't made, like I'm saying all this stuff like it's very funny, but it's not made, with the care level of like one of those Friedberg Seltzer parodies, you know what I mean? Like this isn't Scary Movie, you know what I mean? This is like made with all of the care and craftsmanship that you will get from all of these other fantastic horror films that have come before. It's just tweaked a little bit so that certain things come across more funny. I think it's very much so, obviously, also like playing with like the Stephen King kind of structure. Obviously, we mentioned this is an adaptation of a short story he wrote involving the monkey, and it has all of the tropes. Got some school bullies, some people that go overboard as far as how evil they are, a haunting object, cursed object, this generational trauma that sticks around, follows you into adulthood, estranged family stuff, loser dad. It has so many of the King tropes, but like I was kind of saying before with King, adaptations are a dime a dozen, and his stories are a dime a dozen. You got so many of them out there. And you can't deny there are certain things, like people have, created drinking games off of like Stephen King, or like checklists, you pick out certain Stephen King tropes, to describe certain things you're seeing that are quite common in the stories that he tells, which, like I was kind of saying before, there are your good adaptations, there are your bad ones. If you do it in just the right ways, you got a fantastic story, you got a fantastic movie. If you do it any other way, if you miss the mark in one or two areas, you might create a film that doesn't hit with people, it doesn't connect. Some people kind of look at it like, really? Is this a good representation of the book? Because this seems bad. And I feel like Oz Perkins also, in adapting this, like, had to have recognized that, be like, okay, yeah, people like to, point out these things. Why don't I make a movie? We're already kind of trying to go for like a bit more of like a offbeat, campy vibe. Why don't we also like have these Stephen King tropes and just play them in these different ways so that they do come across funnier, And I just really do love so many approaches they took in the writing of this, in the filmmaking of this. Theo James, by the way, all of the actors do great, but he is the lead here, playing dual roles, as mentioned, the twins. We see more of him as Hal, and he's come a long way since Divergent. He's shown up in The White Lotus as well, and the Netflix Gentleman show, which I do recommend. It was pretty good. Divergent was a long time ago, and from what I remember, it wasn't like embarrassing in those or anything like that, but it almost does seem like people have kind of forgotten about him. Like he might have been this big thing if Divergent maybe, took off a bit more, he's no Robert Pattinson now, at least, you know what I mean, or anyone equivalent to that. So it's almost like with these past couple projects, he's kind of had to like reestablish himself. And with The Monkey, this is his most impressive work to date, at least for me. I love how he plays both of these brothers. I was also really impressed with the actor who plays his son, and it's very easy for them to also, write a strange child relationship where someone's always screaming and whining, but then they themselves make these idiotic, stupid choices. I really like how this kid, well, he'll mention anytime whenever his dad like is fucking up, but he also has like kind of like this matter of fact like, oh, okay, kind of vibe to him that I felt was like pretty natural and like a good reflection of like where a lot of people are now, like a lot of kids are now, as far as like any familial strife they have. Like I thought they did that pretty well. Tatiana Maslany plays Theo James's mom in flashbacks. She's also really good in this. She plays a mom, and every once in a while she says something with a straight face that I was just like, you know what I mean? Like intentionally, it's not like oh, she's bad. Like no, she knows exactly how to play this. She knows exactly what kind of tone they're going for. I think even Oz Perkins has like really praised what kind of an actress she is, where she's willing to, give you so many different takes of a scene and it all works. Probably why she's coming back for Keeper, which I'm excited for, even though I didn't get to see that trailer for it. Hopefully it comes online soon. I'm looking forward to it. She's great in this. There's this wonderful shot that they use so many times in the marketing of her just like screaming, blood coming out of it. And, this movie isn't very scary, I would say. It is more of that comedy. It just has these great visuals, these great striking visuals. I would say, though, that shot is the scare, like, when it's playing out, that was the, like, scariest thing in the movie. Got under my skin, and, I mean, you need the actor to sell it. You can have your framing set up just right and your, whatever effects they did to do the blood stuff, but you need the actor to sell it, and she sold it. She was fucking awesome in this. If I had to have any issues with this movie, I would say I do think the time jump from, like, twin boys to Theo James present, there are certain details where I'm like, ooh, how did they even get to this point? Like, how did this happen? And that I wish they explored a bit more that they didn't. So I just kind of wish we saw more. Like, this could all be budgetary as well. They shot this with like a 10 million budget or so. And it's also filmed like hour and a half to 40-minute kind of runtime. So keep it tight, keep it in budget, but I do wish we saw a bit more. I also wish we had some kind of resolution with the Theo James' ex-wife and Elijah Wood as the new stepdad. He was really good in that scene, Elijah Wood. And it was a really, like, taking the, like, deadbeat dad thing to a different level, and that I found really funny. I just wish there was some kind of resolution to it. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that one shot that's in the trailer, that's pretty much from the only scene that he is in, and I kind of was like, they kind of set up something that I think still needs to be resolved, just at least one other shot, just one quick little scene would have done maybe just to resolve this. But that's pretty much it as far as my flaws. I just wish I saw more of the movie, which, as I've said before, sometimes that's not inherently a bad thing. I did really enjoy this. Like I said before, I can totally understand why some people, this wouldn't be for them. It's not their vibe. But if you are into like more like comedy, if you thought this was going to be like the next disturbing dark horror film, it's not, so you might be able to have fun with it. So if you want to give it a shot, if you just want to, see like, okay, I've heard these things about it being tonally confused, but if it's trying to be more of a comedy, maybe go give it a shot. Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely recommend that. Like, I'm sorry, like, the fact that, like, the only, like, jump scare noise, or one of the only jump scare noises that I remember them using is used on, like, just a real estate agent walking up to Theo James's car and surprising him and then going on to, like, try to sell him stuff. It's like, I feel like And the fact that there's a moment, no spoilers, that where a character, like, makes a realization and acts like, oh, this changes everything. Oh, I didn't think about that. Over the most basic, like, simplistic thing. I found that really fucking fun. Like, I don't know how you can watch the movie, have those scenes, and still be like, it doesn't know when it wants to be serious. I'm gonna give The Monkey an A-. I think it rides that line of having these important themes that they want to discuss while immersing it in this offbeat comedy. I think they do that really well. The gore stuff, the kills are fantastic. The setups for them are great. The editing is wonderful. Cinematography, set design. The actors are committed. They're directed so well. You know, everything is just working on top levels. I just wish we saw a bit more of it. But if you've seen The Monkey already, leave your thoughts in the comments below what you thought of it. And as always, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to subscribe. I'm Jackson Fulcher. See you guys next time.